Hello, miladies of inestimable value. People fear what they can't label, and they attack what they can't control. That single truth explains why Sigma females keep getting shoved into the bad girl box, even when they're not doing anything remotely scandalous. In fact, recent behavioral studies show that people rate highly independent women as more intimidating, even when their behavior is exactly the same as everyone else's. Translation: the problem isn't her personality, it's the public's insecurity doing jumping jacks. And that's where the suspense begins. Because the Sigma female doesn't try to be mysterious, rebellious, or unapproachable. She simply exists in a world that gets uncomfortable the moment a woman stops asking for approval, like it's oxygen. She's not breaking rules. She's just refusing to follow the unwritten ones designed to keep everyone predictable and easy to manage. But here's the funny part. The more she minds her own business, the more people start whispering like she's plotting something. It's almost impressive how a woman could be drinking water, planning her weekend, and boom, someone decides she's the villain of their storyline. So today we're diving into the real reason society keeps painting Sigma females as the bad girls. Not the Hollywood version, not the TikTok version, but the raw, uncomfortable truth people pretend not to notice. And trust me, once you understand these reasons, you'll never look at the bad girl label the same way again. Number 1, she's too self-contained to be controlled, and society dislikes women who don't come with a manual. People call Sigma females bad girls because they're not built to be controlled, and that alone is enough to make society panic. Most people like things they can predict, routines, formulas, personalities that follow the script. But a Sigma female is the kind of woman who rewrites the script the moment she sees it, and she doesn't bother asking if anyone approves. She doesn't ask for permission before evolving, growing, walking away, or changing her life. She doesn't need a round table of opinions to validate a decision. She doesn't shrink to make anyone feel taller, and she most definitely doesn't fit into the neat, tiny boxes people use to feel like they understand the world. That's when the labeling starts, because uncontrollable sounds too honest, but bad girl makes it sound like she's the problem. Her independence hits people where it hurts, their need to feel needed. When someone can't influence her choices, emotions, pace, or priorities, they start to feel irrelevant, and irrelevant people get defensive fast. They start projecting their insecurities onto her. Suddenly she's too cold, too stubborn, or too bold. But none of that is actually about her. It's about them losing the power they thought they had. Humans have this funny habit of trying to tame what they don't understand, and when taming fails, they switch to attacking. The deeper truth is that a Sigma female's autonomy triggers people who secretly wish they had the same spine but never built one. She moves through life without relying on approval, applause, or emotional babysitting, and that kind of freedom exposes how stuck everyone else is. Instead of admitting their own fear, they call her rebellious. Instead of admitting their own dependence, they call her detached. Instead of admitting she's simply self-directed, they call her difficult. She becomes the bad girl, not because she broke rules, but because she refused to follow rules that never made sense in the first place. Society loves compliant women. Society praises predictable women. Society feels safe with agreeable women. But a woman who belongs only to herself, that's unsettling. That's unfamiliar, and unfamiliar things get turned into villains. The irony is that she's not trying to threaten anyone. She's not trying to prove anything. She's literally just living according to her own standards, but even that is treated like an act of rebellion. Her life is hers, and hers alone, and in a world built on keeping people manageable, that's the real reason she gets labeled the bad girl. Number 2. She sets the emotional temperature in the room without trying, and people hate losing influence. This is one of the biggest reasons Sigma females get labeled as bad girls, and it has nothing to do with attitude. It's the quiet authority they carry without even meaning to. A Sigma female doesn't walk in trying to dominate a space or control anyone. She simply enters with her own internal weather system, calm, grounded, unbothered, and the entire room adjusts around her. People notice it instantly, even if they don't understand it. Her presence changes the atmosphere, and the funny part is, she's not doing anything dramatic. She's just being centered in a world where most people depend on external chaos to feel alive. What unsettles people is that she isn't easily swayed by the emotions of others. If someone around her is panicking, she doesn't absorb it. If everyone else is competing for attention, she doesn't join the circus. If people expect her to react just because the group is reacting, she stays in her lane. That level of emotional independence feels like power, and people don't know how to process power that isn't loud or aggressive. They're used to people who broadcast their feelings like a news channel. A Sigma female does the opposite. She controls her own responses, and her self-control becomes the anchor everyone subconsciously gravitates toward. But this creates a problem. The people who are used to being the emotional influencers suddenly feel invisible. They're used to setting the tone, influencing the mood, or being the center of attention. Around her, their spotlight dims naturally, not because she steals it, but because she doesn't need it. She becomes the reference point, not through force, but through stability. And losing that unspoken influence feels threatening to people who rely on emotional dominance or social manipulation. So they label her as cold, arrogant, or bad. They start assuming she's intentionally trying to outshine them, when in reality, she's not even competing. She's simply not emotionally available for the drama, the theatrics, or the group's mood fluctuations. That level of inner control exposes who actually has control over themselves and who doesn't. People resent her not because she's doing anything wrong, but because her calm reveals the chaos they hide. Her self-mastery reveals their lack of it. And when someone changes the atmosphere without seeking attention, approval, or permission, it feels like a threat to those who depend on emotional influence to feel powerful. That's why she gets called the bad girl. She unknowingly takes the crown from people who were never used to sharing it. Number 3. Her independence exposes who's been faking their independence. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths about Sigma females, and it's exactly why people quietly shove them into the bad girl category. A Sigma female doesn't announce her independence. She lives it. She doesn't post motivational quotes about being strong or unbothered. She just functions without leaning on a crowd. She doesn't perform confidence. She has it. And that alone makes a lot of people uneasy, especially the ones who only pretend to be self-sufficient when it's convenient. Her lifestyle reveals the gap between people who say they're independent and people who truly are. Most people like the idea of independence more than the reality of it. They want the title without the discipline. They want the image without the responsibility. They want to look strong, but still have someone to carry them emotionally. But when a Sigma female shows up living the real thing, no noise, no theatrics, no audience, it exposes how much of their independence was just branding. Suddenly the people who claim to be strong on their own start feeling insecure, because her version of independence isn't loud and it isn't decorative. It's functional. It's steady. It's woven into how she moves through life. She makes decisions without needing a cheerleading squad. She handles her problems without turning them into dramatic storylines. She relies on herself not because she's trying to prove something, but because that's her natural mode. And when others see this, the comparison happens automatically, even when she never asked to be compared. This exposure creates resentment, people start labeling her as difficult, too proud, or aloof, not because she's any of those things, but because her existence challenges their self-image. They can't admit their supposed independence has training wheels, so they blame her for making them feel inadequate. The truth is, she's not trying to outshine anyone or compete with anyone. She's living according to her own standards, and those standards unintentionally highlight who's been faking the persona of a self-made, self-guided person. What makes it even more threatening is that she doesn't brag about it. Quiet independence hits harder than loud declarations because it can't be dismissed as attention-seeking. It's real, and real independence makes people question themselves. That's when the labeling begins. That's when she becomes the bad girl. Not because she's rebellious, but because her authenticity exposes their performance. And people will always attack the mirror that shows them what they don't want to see. Number 4. She doesn't treat relationships like lifeboats, and that makes clingy people see her as dangerous. One of the biggest reasons Sigma females get mislabeled as bad girls is because they don't treat relationships, romantic or otherwise, as rescue missions. She enters connections out of genuine choice, not desperation, not loneliness, and definitely not fear of being alone. And this alone separates her from a lot of people who use relationships as emotional insurance policies. When someone isn't afraid to stand alone, it automatically exposes those who can't survive without constant attachment. A Sigma female doesn't cling, chase, or beg for emotional security. She builds her own. She's not the type to panic when someone pulls away or goes quiet. She doesn't need a relationship to feel relevant or validated, which already confuses people who measure their worth by how attached someone is to them. Her emotional independence feels threatening because it breaks the usual power dynamics, where one person lives in fear of losing the other. With her, there's no fear. She can love deeply, care intensely, and still walk away if the situation becomes draining or disrespectful. To people who rely on emotional dependency to feel in control, her ability to detach looks like rebellion. She's not cold, she's simply not wired to treat people as emotional life jackets. When she stays, it's because she wants to. When she leaves, it's because the connection no longer aligns with her peace. That level of choice-driven bonding is rare, and rare things get judged. People want relationships to be proof of loyalty, proof of commitment, proof of value. For a Sigma female, the real proof is how she treats you, not the fact that she's glued to you. What irritates others most is that she doesn't crumble when things fall apart. While many see a breakup or friendship ending as a world-shattering event, she sees it as part of life. She's willing to outgrow people without apologizing for it. That emotional maturity gets twisted into she doesn't care or she's heartless. Meanwhile, the truth is that she simply refuses to lose herself while trying to hold on to someone else. Her calm approach to relationships exposes who depends on attachment for identity. Those who can't function without constant emotional reassurance will always misunderstand her. They need relationships to survive. She needs relationships to connect, not to breathe. And anything that doesn't fit the usual emotional script is quickly labeled bad, especially when the woman following it is fully in control of her heart, her choices, and her life. Number 5. She reads intentions before actions, and people hate being decoded too quickly. One of the most unsettling things about a Sigma female is her ability to see straight through people long before they reveal their true colors. She doesn't need drama, long speeches, or a meltdown to understand what someone is really about. Her intuition is sharp, her observation skills are almost unfair, and she notices the small hesitations, the tone shifts, the hidden motives, the little games people think they're playing in secret. Most people walk around hoping no one figures out their real intentions too quickly. Unfortunately for them, she figures it out instantly, and that alone makes her dangerous in their minds. People who rely on manipulation, flattery, guilt trips, or emotional bait absolutely hate women like her because she ruins the script. She doesn't fall for the bait. She doesn't get confused. She doesn't get trapped in the performance. She identifies the intention behind someone's actions before they even finish their sentence. And when someone realizes they can't fool her, they don't try to become better. They try to label her as the problem. They call her paranoid, too suspicious, too analytical, or untrusting, not because she is any of those things, but because being exposed makes them uncomfortable. A Sigma female isn't judging people harshly. She simply refuses to ignore what's obvious. That scares people who depend on being misunderstood long enough to get what they want. Her ability to read intentions also disrupts relationships where one person expects to control the narrative. The friend who always wants to be the hero, the co-worker who wants to look innocent while stirring trouble, the partner who wants to hide flaws behind romance. She doesn't fall for the front. She sees the motive under the behavior, and her clarity makes people defensive. When you can't hide your real intentions, you start to resent the person who sees them. What makes this even more intimidating is that she rarely exposes people publicly. She simply adjusts her behavior, pulls back, or sets boundaries without giving long explanations. That silence terrifies people who know she's already figured them out. They start wondering what she knows, how she knows it, and what she'll do with that knowledge. The label bad girl becomes a convenient shield. They use it to protect their ego from the reality that they weren't as clever as they believed. The truth is, she's not trying to catch anyone. She's not trying to expose or confront anyone. She just pays attention. But for people who rely on hiding their intentions, a woman who sees, quietly, accurately, consistently, is always going to be treated like a threat. And threats always get labeled. Number 6. Her lifestyle is built on quiet rules no one else understands. Solitude, precision, intentionality. This is one of the biggest reasons people misjudge Sigma females. Her entire life runs on a system most people don't even know exists. She has her own internal compass, her own pace, her own criteria, and her own way of moving that doesn't match the standard template society expects women to follow. She's not chaotic, she's not rebellious, and she's not difficult. She's simply operating from a mindset that values depth over noise, purpose over popularity, and clarity over convenience. The average person is used to predictable routines and predictable personalities. They expect you to follow the crowd, check the boxes, and move in familiar patterns. A Sigma female does none of that. She chooses solitude intentionally, not because she hates people, but because she thinks better when she's not drowning in other people's expectations. That preference alone confuses people who treat constant social interaction like a survival requirement. When someone functions well in their own space, others feel judged by default, even though she's not judging anyone. She lives with precision, maybe not in a robotic way, but in a way that shows she values her time, her energy, her boundaries, and her peace. She doesn't drift through life making random choices and hoping things work out. She's deliberate, and deliberate people are always misunderstood by those who live accidentally and then blame the world for the results. Her intentionality exposes how much of everyone else's life is based on impulse, pressure, and habit. People get uncomfortable because they can't read her. They don't know what she's thinking, why she does things a certain way, or what her next move will be. Her quiet rules feel like secrets, and people fear what they can't decode. They assume she has an agenda, or she's hiding something, or she thinks she's better than everyone else. None of that is true. She just lives her life according to her own structure, not the one society pre-installed. This is why she gets labeled as the bad girl. Not because she's bad, but because people can't stand it when someone doesn't need their validation or follow their script. Anything that doesn't fit the norm gets treated like a threat. And a Sigma female's lifestyle, self-led, intentional, self-preserving, is the kind of threat that makes people uncomfortable without her saying a single word. Her quiet rules challenge the loud chaos everyone else is used to, and instead of adjusting, they label her. Number 7. She knows how to walk away without turning it into a dramatic disaster, and that level of self-respect scares people who depend on chaos to feel important. This is one of the sharpest reasons Sigma females get painted as bad girls. Not because they're reckless or cruel, but because they're the only ones who can leave a situation cleanly, quietly, and confidently. Most people stay longer than they should, argue longer than they need to, and cling to connections that expired months ago. A Sigma female doesn't operate like that. When she sees that something no longer aligns with her peace, her growth, or her values, she steps out. No screaming matches, no guilt trips, no emotional theatrics. And that terrifies people who rely on emotional dependence or conflict to keep relationships alive. Her ability to leave with dignity reveals a harsh truth. Some people only feel powerful when others are stuck to them. When she refuses to stay in toxic friendships, draining family dynamics, or relationships full of excuses, the people she leaves behind don't know how to handle the loss of control. They can't understand how a woman can value herself enough to walk away without waiting for disaster. Instead of facing their own behavior, they twist the story. They call her disloyal, ruthless, heartless, or a bad girl, because it's easier than admitting they were the reason she left. What makes her even more threatening is that she doesn't look back to check if someone is chasing her. She doesn't post breakup warnings. She doesn't give 3-month emotional exit speeches. She doesn't beg anyone to understand her decision. She simply leaves the door that no longer leads anywhere. That level of emotional maturity feels foreign in a world where people are addicted to drama and validation. And it goes deeper. A Sigma female doesn't leave to prove a point. She leaves because she's done participating in cycles that lead nowhere. She doesn't do half love, half respect, or half effort. So when she walks away, she's not bluffing. People who aren't used to genuine boundaries see that as rebellion. They're threatened because she won't play the same emotional games they've gotten used to with others. The truth is, she doesn't enjoy leaving anyone. She just refuses to abandon herself in the process of keeping others comfortable. And in a world that expects women to endure everything silently, a woman who can walk away for her own peace is automatically labeled the villain. She becomes the bad girl, not because she destroys relationships, but because she refuses to stay in ones that destroy her. Number 8, she refuses to bond over negativity, and people who survive on drama see that as a personal attack. One of the fastest ways a Sigma female gets labeled as a bad girl is by simply refusing to join the emotional group chats built on complaints, gossip, bitterness, and shared misery. Most people bond by tearing something down, another person, their job, their partner, their own life. Negativity has become a social glue, and when someone doesn't participate, the group starts acting like she's breaking some sacred rule. A Sigma female doesn't feed on emotional chaos. She doesn't get energized by complaining. She doesn't enjoy picking people apart, comparing failures, or bonding through collective dissatisfaction. To her, negativity is noise, and she hates noise. She'd rather focus on solutions, growth, peace, or silence. But to people who use negativity as a personality trait, her refusal to join in feels like rejection. They start assuming she thinks she's better than everyone else, when all she wants is her peace. They start whispering, she's too serious, she's too cold, or she doesn't want to fit in, simply because she won't turn her life into a drama episode for entertainment. In their minds, if she's not complaining with them, then she must be the enemy. What really makes them uncomfortable is that she doesn't crack under pressure the way they hope she will. They want her to get frustrated, emotional, messy, anything that makes her look normal to them. But she doesn't give them that satisfaction. She handles her life quietly, honestly, and without making chaos her brand. And that calmness exposes their dependency on emotional disturbance. A Sigma female also doesn't allow people to dump their chaos on her daily, not because she lacks empathy, but because she knows the difference between someone venting and someone using negativity as a lifestyle. She has limits, and she enforces them without apologies. People who rely on constant emotional dumping see boundaries as hostility, and that's when the labeling begins. The truth is, she's not trying to disconnect from people. She's trying to protect her mental space. But in a society where misery loves company, a woman who chooses peace over drama automatically becomes the outsider. She becomes the bad girl, not because she spreads negativity, but because she refuses to celebrate it with everyone else. Her peace is her strength, and for those addicted to chaos, peace feels like an insult. Number 9. She doesn't ask for permission to upgrade her life, and people mistake that for rebellion. One of the most overlooked reasons Sigma females get labeled as bad girls is how unapologetically they take charge of their own lives. She doesn't wait for approval, she doesn't seek validation, and she certainly doesn't pause to check if everyone around her is comfortable with her decisions. She changes careers, moves cities, ends relationships, or starts new projects simply because it aligns with her growth and values. To her, life is hers to design, and she treats it as a personal project, not a group decision. But the people around her rarely see it that way. Most people are used to women who negotiate every step of their lives. Society has conditioned them to ask, to explain, to justify, and to make sure they aren't stepping out of line. A Sigma female breaks that mold. She doesn't give explanations she doesn't owe. She doesn't frame her life in terms of what others expect. She doesn't wait for permission slips to pursue opportunities. And because that behavior is so foreign, people project motives onto it. Her independence is misread as defiance, her self-direction is seen as arrogance, and her confidence is quickly turned into bad girl energy. What's even more intimidating is that she doesn't announce her plans. She doesn't post her intentions on social media or seek public validation. Her life changes quietly, deliberately, and efficiently. And when people realize that she has shifted her entire trajectory without involving them, it feels threatening. They start questioning themselves. Why can't I do that? Or, why didn't I think of that first? Instead of admiring her, they assign her a label that makes them feel safer, as if calling her rebellious or bad could reduce the threat she poses. Her refusal to ask permission also exposes a harsh truth. Most people aren't leading their own lives. They're following scripts written by expectation, habit, or fear of judgment. She doesn't care about those scripts. She doesn't bend, negotiate, or explain herself to maintain comfort for others. That unwavering self-possession, while quietly extraordinary, makes her a target for misinterpretation. People see her progress, her freedom, and her focus, and because they can't replicate it, they label it. She becomes the bad girl, not because she's causing trouble, but because she's living on her own terms, in a way that exposes the limitations of everyone else around her. And that, in a world obsessed with control, is the real act of rebellion. Number 10. She breaks the invisible social contracts everyone else silently obeys. One of the most misunderstood aspects of Sigma females is how they effortlessly ignore the unwritten rules that most people live by without thinking. These are the tiny, invisible contracts society expects everyone to follow. Smile when uncomfortable, gossip to fit in, over-apologize for existing, nod when you disagree, always explain your choices, and never make anyone feel insecure. Everyone else follows them because they're convenient, expected, or safer. but a Sigma female doesn't. She doesn't nod when she disagrees, she doesn't explain her every move, and she doesn't perform niceness to make people comfortable. To her, these rules are irrelevant because they're not aligned with truth, integrity, or self-respect. And that makes people label her as difficult or bad the moment they notice. Most people don't even realize they're operating under invisible social contracts until someone like her refuses to comply. They're used to the silent agreement that everyone will act predictable, agreeable, and safe. When she refuses to follow along, it feels like a direct challenge, even though she isn't trying to challenge anyone. Her choices are not a performance, they are simply her reality. If she's quiet in a room where chatter is expected, if she speaks bluntly when diplomacy is preferred, if she sets a boundary where people expected compliance, she suddenly becomes the problem. People interpret her authenticity as defiance because they've never had to deal with someone who ignores the social scripts without fear. Breaking these invisible contracts also exposes how much of society relies on performance, not honesty. People who gossip, manipulate, or subtly control their social circles depend on everyone playing by the same hidden rules. A Sigma female disrupts that. She refuses to participate in performative behavior, and in doing so, she makes people uncomfortable. They feel exposed, unprepared, and powerless because their quiet expectations no longer control the situation. Her independence in social conduct isn't calculated or attention-seeking. She simply moves according to her own principles. That level of freedom, clarity, and self-possession is unfamiliar and threatening in a world that rewards compliance and punishes deviation. And since most people can't separate her choice from their own insecurity, the easiest explanation is to call her the bad girl. The truth is far simpler. She's just refusing to play a game she never agreed to, and that alone makes her dangerous in the eyes of those who are still trapped by the invisible rules they silently obey. Number 11. Her peace is too expensive for small-minded people to afford, so they call her names to devalue it. One of the most subtle and misunderstood reasons Sigma females get labeled as bad girls is because they carry a level of inner peace that most people can't comprehend, let alone reach. She's not dramatic about it. She doesn't announce how calm, centered, or untouchable she is. She simply lives in a way that protects her energy, her time, and her sanity. To her, peace is non-negotiable. She won't let toxicity, manipulation, or petty expectations invade her life. But here's the thing. Most people aren't used to encountering someone who won't compromise their calm for anyone. That kind of self-possession makes them feel powerless, jealous, or inadequate, so they attach labels instead of admitting the truth. People who thrive on control, gossip, or emotional turbulence see her serenity as a challenge. When she doesn't react the way they expect, when she doesn't bow to pressure, when she doesn't over-explain or overcompensate to make them feel secure, they feel threatened. They can't reach her, influence her, or manipulate her the way they manipulate others, and that's uncomfortable. So instead of admitting they're uncomfortable because they're powerless in her presence, they try to make her peace seem like arrogance, detachment, or bad behavior. What makes her inner peace so powerful and threatening is that it's consistent. She doesn't fluctuate based on the moods, opinions, or chaos of those around her. She doesn't need external validation to stay grounded. That stability shines a light on how chaotic, reactive, and dependent other people are. Her calmness doesn't just exist in isolation. It exposes the instability of everyone who expects her to behave like them. And because people hate being exposed, they label her in ways that diminish her authority over her own life. A Sigma female's peace is like a private currency that only she can spend, and anyone trying to buy control over it quickly realizes it's impossible. She doesn't give access, she doesn't compromise, and she certainly doesn't tolerate interference. That's why she gets called cold, unapproachable, or bad. The truth is far simpler. She values herself and her mental space too much to negotiate it for anyone else. People can't understand that level of self-respect, so they attack it instead of aspiring to it. Her peace is priceless, and society tends to fear what it cannot afford. Number 12. She refuses to play the feminine performance game. One of the biggest reasons Sigma females are often labeled as bad girls is because they don't participate in the performative roles society expects from women. Most people unconsciously accept a set of rules about how a woman should act: soft, agreeable, pleasing, emotional on demand, charming enough to smooth over conflict, and always careful not to threaten anyone's ego. A Sigma female ignores all of that. She doesn't perform sweetness to win favor. She doesn't force smiles to make people comfortable. She doesn't shrink herself to fit someone else's expectations. She simply exists authentically, and that authenticity makes others uncomfortable because it refuses to follow the social script. She doesn't perform femininity for validation. She doesn't rely on flirtation, manipulation, or dramatics to get attention, respect, or influence. In a world where women are often judged by how well they manage the perceptions of others, her refusal to conform becomes radical. People expect her to act a certain way, and when she doesn't, they panic. They start whispering that she's cold, difficult, or bad, when in reality, she's simply refusing to shrink to make them feel better. The Sigma female also refuses the constant need for social approval. She doesn't groom her behavior to match the moods of others. She doesn't perform empathy as a transaction. She doesn't exchange charm for safety or respect. That level of emotional independence makes people insecure. They feel exposed because her presence highlights how performative their own behavior is. Her authenticity casts a light on their compromises, their manipulations, and their attempts to manage reality through social theatrics. Her refusal to play the game also makes her unpredictable. People can't anticipate her reactions because she isn't following the invisible checklist they expect. That unpredictability is misread as danger or defiance. In truth, it's simply honesty, the kind of honesty that doesn't apologize for existing or for taking up space. Society fears women who can live fully, honestly, and powerfully without performing for anyone. A Sigma female doesn't need the approval of a crowd to thrive, and in a culture where control and validation are currency, that refusal makes her a target for labels. She becomes the bad girl, not because she's intentionally rebellious, but because she refuses to be a performance, a prop, or a puzzle for others to solve. She's just real, and that is terrifying to people who thrive on illusion. Sigma females are called bad girls, not because they break rules or seek drama, but because they break the expectations that everyone else silently lives by. Their independence exposes pretenders, their calmness threatens manipulators, and their authenticity makes the insecure uncomfortable. They don't follow scripts, they don't perform, and they don't negotiate their peace or self-respect for anyone. In a world that rewards compliance and punishes deviation, simply existing on your own terms becomes radical. The truth is brutally simple. People fear what they cannot control, and they attack what they cannot label. Sigma females refuse to be tamed, read every hidden motive, walk away when necessary, and carry a quiet authority that shifts the emotional balance without effort. That combination is unnerving for those who rely on dependence, drama, or social scripts to feel safe. Instead of admiration, they receive whispers, judgments, and the bad girl label, a shield society uses to justify discomfort with her freedom. But here's the paradox. The very qualities that earn Sigma females this label are the same ones that make them extraordinary. Their boundaries, their detachment, their intentionality, and their refusal to compromise are not flaws. They are superpowers. They live on their own terms, not in the shadows of expectation, and that freedom, while misunderstood, is what sets them apart. So the next time someone calls a Sigma female bad, it's worth asking, who really feels threatened here? Is it her, or the people who can't handle a woman being fully herself? The bad girl image isn't her failing. It's a mirror reflecting the fears, insecurities, and dependence of everyone else. And in that reflection, she remains untouchable, unshakable, and undeniably free. In the end, being labeled bad is not a curse. It's the price of independence, and the world has always feared what it cannot control. Sigma females pay no attention because they know the truth. Living on your own terms is the only way to live at all.